Hello, and welcome to the Point in Leadership podcast. I'm your host, Mike Hopkins, and today I'm very excited because I'm going to be joined by a colleague of mine, Jono Oswin. He's an associate of DECA. I've worked with Jono now for a number of years, and he always brings an insight that I find genuinely really inspiring. Today, we're going to look at two subjects. The first subject is going to be communication. The second subject is going to be credibility and how to build credibility as leaders. I hope you looked at the first podcast, Stepping Forward, because this podcast will build upon the subject raised in that particular episode. So without further ado, let me find Jono and let's get into these two subjects today. I hope you enjoy. Hey Jono, how you doing?
Yeah, good, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. Yeah. Jono, tell us a bit about you.
A bit about me. Well, I'm not going to give you my age, but I'm fairly long in the tooth. I've lived a little bit. I've done a few things. I've essentially, from a career perspective, had two careers, I would say. My first career for 20 plus years was in the field of marketing, advertising, working for agencies, mostly in London, working for some fairly big clients in account handling. So I was dealing with clients and putting together strategies. And I reached board level of that, which was kind of great. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. Then I suddenly lost my mojo. I suddenly lost my purpose for being there. I didn't really have a purpose anymore. I just found myself spending lots of money and time and energy and resource getting people to drink more gin. And I thought it didn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
So I reviewed it and I changed it. And I thought, well, what do I like doing? What do I not like doing? What do I want to do more of? What do I want to learn? And that took me into the world of training, learning, and development. Essentially because of the connection with people. That was the real draw to it all. And I've been doing that for 20 odd years, close to 20 years, and absolutely love it.
you're very good at it. And I don't say that lightly.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you very much.
No, I genuinely mean it. Yeah. Yeah, and I think you know that. When you lost your mojo, how did you know you lost your mojo? What was the tell?
Yeah, good question. Um, I lost a bit of my fight.
Right.
I lost the desire to do the very best. I began to do average.
Yeah. Okay.
I began to just, sort of not quite bare minimum, but close to bare minimum. And I knew what was enough by that stage. I lost any desire to really improve and develop and move forward. I just sort of, was happy to tread water. And it was a fairly quick realization, I have to say.
Right.
It wasn't a sort of over a couple of years I suddenly realized, it was over a matter of a few weeks or a month. So I suddenly thought, no, this is really not doing it for me. So made some changes.
Interesting. Yeah. Good. Well, and tell us, some of the places you work, some of the clients you've worked with. What sort of stands out in that illustrious career of yours?
Well, clients range from oil companies to alcohol booze companies to charities
There's a
to
lot of booze in your career, isn't
yeah,
there?
there just seemed to be. So I guess I was a lot younger then. With hindsight, I'd look back and make the comments I'm going to make, but at the time, I'm not sure I really realised it. But if I look back, my view was that most of the people I worked with did were two things. One, they were pretty average.
Okay.
Uh, I didn't come across many people who were would consider to be outstanding in what they did and really revered them and looked up to them. And from a client perspective, in relation to leadership, again, I think they used hierarchy as their tool to
Yeah.
to run leadership. And I sort of fell into that trap a little bit at the time. Sort of went with it, oh yes, well they're the client, they're higher than me in inverted commas, and sort of went with it. But I wish I'd been aware then of some of the stuff I'm aware of now, and I might have challenged that a little bit.
Your own level of authority.
Yeah, yeah. They used hierarchy for authority. They didn't use themselves or knowledge or their behavior for authority. They didn't earn the authority. They assumed authority.
Yeah, okay. Through title.
Yeah.
Well, that takes us nicely into this podcast, actually, Johnny. So, when I was thinking about these podcasts, you came to mind because I did one a month or so ago about stepping forward
Mm,
in leadership, because when we take a step back, sometimes we're abdicating
yeah.
authority. And so the two subjects today I'd like to gain your thoughts on, and I'll try and talk as little as I can. Difficult for me.
That might be hard. Yeah.
Difficult for me is communication, and then also building credibility. Which I think two really important subjects for a leader. Yeah, in terms of communication, if we take that subject first,
Mm,
this is known as the digital age. So, a lot of communication is online, or, in the face-to-face world, it's changed. People's tolerance, I feel, for long, lengthy communication has changed. Do you
interesting.
disagree?
Um, mm, I'm not sure
Okay.
about that. I mean, it's an interesting thought process. I think it could be argued that the reverse is true, that because of the digital age and because of remoteness in business and, meetings like this, which are, on a screen, that actually people's desire to connect and get together has increased. And when they do get together, it's a joy, and they communicate well and deeply. I think there is an argument for that, and I think there should be an argument for that. I think it's important that human connection, I think, is important. So the digital age, I think, is fantastic and is efficient, but not necessarily in every way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. But I guess we have to be more agile how we communicate. In the past,
Mm.
it'd be in a room in a meeting, but these days, we have to have that agility and that ability to flex our style.
Yeah. Uh, Interesting. I ran a session on Zoom yesterday for a group of managers at a very large engineering firm. And at the beginning of the session, there were 8 people in the room. And at the beginning of the session, there were 2 of them who had no cameras. And by the end of the session, another person's camera had broken. So I had 3 people out of 8 with no cameras. And it had a real impact on communication, talking about the digital age.
Yeah,
One
yeah,
of them I can forgive, it broke during the session, and that was fine. But the other 2 just said, "Oh, yeah, my laptop hasn't got one." And I was really surprised by that, and asked the question about whether they thought it was important or not. And my view is they missed out.
yeah,
People can hide behind these things. I think that is a consequence of digital communication. People can hide behind a camera like this and turning it off, and not wanting to show themselves. But I think we miss out. If you imagine, Mike, we were having this conversation to a blank screen, it would probably be a different conversation. Would you agree?
totally, totally. It's, you're removing a lot of the communication by not seeing the visual reaction
Yeah,
and response. You're just going on the verbal. It's a different
yeah,
thing. I think it really aids the quality of the communication when you can see.
yeah.
Yeah. So the question I want to ask
Mm.
is, when have you got communication wrong in the past, and not in a small way, but in a big way? Oh, I know it's going to be hard for you to find an example.
Where have I got communication wrong? I do have. I do have an example.
Do you mind sharing?
No, that's fine. So I was just thinking through my head, just to remind myself of it. Many years ago, actually, it is an example that I recall sometimes when I'm training people around communication. So when I was working for a relatively small marketing agency, there were 40 of us in the organization. I was what's called an account director, which is sort of level 3 down from the top, if you like.
Yeah.
And I was running a team of people. I had 7 people in my team. And I noticed that they were really under pressure. We had 3 clients we were servicing, and the clients were getting more demanding, and everyone was working long hours. There was signs of a little bit of burnout, I was pushing them because I needed them to perform, but I was also very concerned about them. And I went to my managing director because I wanted to hire another individual. I wanted to hire a junior into the team, take some of the heat of all the day-to-day off the rest of the team so they could get on with the work. And I had a conversation with him that went a bit like this. Hi, Paul, I just wanted to have a little chat with you because my team's, really feeling the pressure at the moment. They're really under the cosh. I can see it in them. I'm really feeling for them. They're very tired. They're working long hours. They're even coming in at the weekend, and I'm just really worried about them. And I want to get another member of staff. I want to ease the pressure a bit. I think they've earned it. They deserve a little bit of just someone to take some of the smaller stuff off them so they can take the foot off the pedal a little bit. And, I'd just like you to sanction a new member of staff, please.
And had you prepared this communication, or was it just in the moment?
I had prepared it in my head briefly. That in other words, I went with an emotional argument
Yeah,
because my people were under stress, and I knew, of course, he'd understand. So of course he'd buy into that. What I hadn't factored really was what sort of was a very direct, analytical, logical, rational individual. And instead of saying to me, "Oh," I expected him to say, "Well, yeah, okay, absolutely, John. If if you think they need one, then of course, just make it work. Make sure you get the numbers in, and of course, it's fine." But he didn't say that at all.
because that was obvious in your head, wasn't it?
In my head, that's exactly what he'd do. Why wouldn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
But he didn't. He said, "Where are the numbers?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, where's the P&L? Where's the cost analysis? Where are you going to get the extra business from to pay for this member of staff?" I said, "Oh, well, it'll come, but if the other guys, if the pressure is taken off the other guys, they'll be able to do a bit more work. I'm sure it'll be okay." And he said, "Well, no, I need an Excel sheet. I need some detail. I need to understand it. I need the numbers." The answer is no. And I went back with my tail between my legs. And the realization was, I had a sort of a moment of being cross with him and blaming him.
Yep.
But then I had a realization, and I thought, you know what? Actually, this is my fault.
Oh,
Didn't communicate it in the right way. I didn't take account of who he was. We talked about flexibility and
yeah, yeah.
being agile in your communication. This was a really good example. What I should have done, despite the fact that it wasn't my style, and I'm, frankly scared of Excel sheets. I have a physical reaction when I see one. I should have presented, some details, some analysis, some facts and figures as to how it was going to work and how it could be justified financially, because that's how he thought. And so it was a real lesson that actually it's my fault. It's not his fault saying no. It's my fault for not presenting it in the right way. And it was just really interesting lesson for me going forward. And since then, I've tried, not always been successful, to build in the flexibility to take account of how someone else is rather than how I am, and present it in their terms rather than in my terms.
That was genuinely quite an interesting realization to come out of that meeting where you'd made this pitch for this extra member of staff.
Mm.
And to walk away with the emotional reaction, why didn't I get it? Why didn't he sort of see my things? But then to take that ownership upon yourself and not just blame your manager. I don't think most people would do that.
Maybe not. It's not for me to say, but it was a significant moment. And I'd also told my team that I was going to do this.
Ooh.
So I had to go back to them and tell them that I'd failed, basically. And I did apologize to them. It wasn't the managing director that just says no. He's like that. I didn't push. I just said, look, I'm really sorry. I've been unable to secure an extra person. I won't give up. I'll try again. And then look to motivate them in other ways. So it was a really interesting moment for me. But having the realization is one thing, doing it is another, and it's not as easy as it sounds to just switch your style to become more or less something in order to play into the other person's preferences, it's quite a challenge, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I think it is. I think it really is. But I really like that realization that I guess if you just blame your manager for the rest of time, nothing changed. But I like that you took ownership and you could change something.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've tried to instill that kind of concept in people ever since, really.
So is there anything that you've seen in recent times that, you've sort of witnessed or heard about that gives you an insight into communication in some way?
Something I've seen in recent times.
Yeah, maybe in the media or in the world around you. You thought about and thought, you know what, that could have been better, or that was an excellent piece of communication, either or.
Uh, I'm not sure I've seen much excellent, if I'm honest.
That's interesting.
Um, an area that frustrates me. It's another part of communication, and I get just increasingly frustrated in a way that's probably unhealthy for me. Is when people in public life, and I guess for the most part I'm talking politics, but take politics in a very broad sense. When they're challenged, when they're interviewed, when they're pushed, when they're asked questions, and they do one of two things. They either don't listen or they just avoid the answer.
I was so tempted to say, what did you say then? But I might not.
I just think this idea of not being honest with your communication, it just absolutely does my head in. And I found screaming at the television or the radio, just, answer the question
Yeah, yeah.
or listen to what's being said, because that's not what they asked you. And I know it's all political spin and all that kind of stuff, but I get very tired of it, and I think it's a bad influence. That's why I get particularly passionate about it, because I think it teaches people that that's okay, and I don't think it is okay. I think we should take responsibility for our communication, and if let's bring it back to business, and if we're on the board of a big business and we're asked a tricky question about shareholder value, we should be honest about it, and not spin it into something else. So I think it sort of sets a precedence which frustrates me. So that's currently, in terms of communication, that's an example I'd probably cite.
So I just had a realization listening to what you were saying there. And I'm interested in your thoughts about this, but I think honesty is becoming counterintuitive.
Mm.
Intuitive.
Tell me more.
We're trying to dress something up to be something it isn't. We're
Yeah.
trying to sort of give our view on something when we maybe fundamentally believe it not to be the truth.
Well, I don't disagree with that. Where do you think that's come from, though?
But I don't know. I mean, immediately I think social media. No idea. But I wonder if we looked in any interview, looked into any interview on TV, whether we'd see the truth or we just see that person's version of the truth. I think it's going to be the latter, right?
I totally agree. I think it is. There seems to be an inability to open our eyes and actually take all the information, not just the information we want to hear, but
Yeah.
all the information, and have a considered view, even if it's bad news.
Because then I can deal with the bad news. I can't deal with try not to use fake news, the label. But if it's just a made-up version,
Yeah,
can't work with it.
no, and it's made up because it suits. It suits
The agenda.
yeah, absolutely, and it's disingenuous. It's not helpful. I think it's destructive, and I think it does start to pervade into society. So that we start to say, actually, let's call them untruths, for want of a better word. They're okay, and I don't think they are.
Wow, so it's counterintuitive, to be honest. then communication is null and void. There's no point.
Yeah, I mean, there is, if we look at some of our most prominent public figures in recent years, not just in the UK, but globally, it seems that you can say whatever you want to say, and when challenged, deny any question that is not the truth and carry on. And there are no consequences. So actually, I think it's incumbent upon us to challenge this, us, the wider population, to challenge this approach and to call people to task. Otherwise, it will continue because there are no consequences to telling an untruth in a significant manner, in a significant way. People will, might question a little bit on it, but if you just continue to deny it, nothing happens. And I find it extraordinary. So I think it is incumbent upon us to challenge people. So, I'm talking here about sort of public life and politics and all that kind of stuff. But if that is the case and it's pervading into society, think about it in relation to business. Think about it if you've got a P&L report that's not as good as you wanted it to be, and how you're going to report that to customers, employees, shareholders, and whether you're going to be honest about it, and whether people as a result are going to say, oh, great, I'll invest more, and then lose it in a year's time, or whether they're going to go and commit to working for that organization when actually it's not what you thought it was, and all those areas. I think it's got significant ramifications if you take it all the way down the line.
The burden of that, if you have any integrity, maybe you can't have integrity if you lie anyway, but the burden of carrying that lie with you must be quite significant.
Maybe not. I mean, yes, if you've got a conscience about it, but if you don't, if you believe that's okay, maybe you don't.
I think I would worry about someone calling it out. I guess.
Yeah. But if you just continue to deny it, seemingly you just get away with it.
So what's your call to action with all of that, John?
Hold people to account.
And have you done that yourself?
I have. Yeah. Oh, I've tried to.
Example?
So I've been disillusioned with the world of politics for a while for this reason, the lack of integrity, barefaced lies, breaking the law, and all that sort of stuff. And don't forget, these are people who are leaders in our society, whom we should look up to, who should be the pinnacle of what we should expect, and all the rest of it. So I've been disillusioned. So I've been trying to get a meeting with my local MP for 5 years.
5 years.
15 separate requests over 5 years to have a 15-minute surgery with my local MP, all of which have been denied until last week, which only came about because I marched myself into the local offices, party offices, and demanded to have a conversation. Even then, it took 6 months to get to see her. So the idea of accountability and wanting to engage with the public seemed to be a bit of a miss. Anyway, I went with the sole purpose of trying to hold my MP to account, who actually, by the by, happens to be a cabinet minister as well. So there's a sort of a greater collective responsibility for what's going on. And I sought to hold her to account on all sorts of topics. And she did what I expected her to do. She swarmed and swerved and denied and went off on different tangents. But I stuck to my guns, and I remained calm, and I just said, that's very interesting, but you haven't answered my question. And I answered the question again to bring her back into it. And what was interesting is she simply didn't like it. Not that there was no media, wasn't being recorded, there was just me and her. But even then, she just almost found it impossible to actually answer the questions. So in terms of actions, I just hold people to account, and I try and I did my little bit, and in that context. But in a business, I think you have a right to hold people to account in a business. So you should be asking wherever you are in the organization, if you're not sure about why something's taking place or you're concerned about something, you should go to your line manager, presumably as a first port of call, and ask the question, why? Why are we doing this? Why is we taking this particular strategy? Please explain it to me so I understand it. And if the line manager doesn't know, then they should go and ask. And you should be asking. I think the greatest question in the world in terms of communication is why, and we don't do it very often.
And I think sometimes we don't ask why, because we don't want to make people feel uncomfortable.
We've learnt not to, because as children, we do it all the time.
Yeah.
When young children, if you've got them and had them, they just, yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? Yeah, but why? It becomes tedious.
Yeah. Yeah.
And many parents, although I don't count myself at this number, fall back on the "because I said so" answer, which is meaningless. So it's trained out of us, and I think that's a real shame, because I think it's of all the questions, it's the most important. Yes, we need to know what we need to do. Yes, we need to know how we need to do it. But if you can understand the why and you committed to it, I think it drives commitment and passion and high performance. If I understand, why this is all taking place, the context of it, not just functionally what I'm doing.
Credibility is the other thing I want to sort of just question you about. What is it? How do? And I don't want to.
Well, you're questioning my credibility.
I didn't know how to bring it up really, Jono, but now you've sort of made it easier for me.
Oh,
But
well, I like to help.
I'm jostling. Credibility is something I think we all hope we have. And as I'm talking about this, I'm thinking imposter syndrome and all of that kind of stuff, is in the same sort of space. But what does credibility mean for you?
It's a really interesting question. I'm not sure if I've got an absolute answer. It'd be great if I said, "Oh, credibility is this. This is what it equals." I'm not entirely sure. I think it's a little. It has an element of honesty in it. If I'm thinking of someone as credible, they need to be honest. If they're dishonest, they're not credible. I think it involves a degree of knowledge in whatever subject is being discussed. Not absolute. I will qualify that by saying my next thing in credibility, I think I look for a degree of vulnerability, which says, actually, I don't know. It's credible. So, but you've got to have a level of knowledge about whatever subject you're talking about to be credible. If I was going to go canoeing down rapids, I'd want to have an instructor that knew about canoeing in rapids. Otherwise, he wouldn't be credible. But if we got to a particularly difficult rapid and he said, "Look, I'm not sure how to handle this, so I've not done this before," that might make me feel uncomfortable, but it would make him credible. That makes sense. So it's sort of the vulnerability is credible. Not falling into the trap of feeling that you always have to have an answer, I think it helps with credibility. In other words, looking to others for that support. So, well, actually, this area better than I do. You have more experience in this area. What do you think? What are your ideas? Because I'm not sure I know. And drawing on others, I think, plays into credibility. So it's not any one thing. And they're all slightly intangible but conceptual. But they all go together to make people credible, I think.
And that is really at the heart of leadership, isn't it? Because if we're not credible, if we can't earn that credibility, then we really can't lead, because people.
I think so. I worked a long time ago when I was in the world of marketing, just before I joined agencies. Actually, I worked for the well-known British holiday camp called Butlins, which is
You had a red coat.
was not. I wish I had been a red coat. They had all the fun. I wasn't a red coat. I was a product manager. But the reason I'm telling it was an amazing experience. I was there for 18 months, and it was eye-opening. But the reason I mention it is because the managing director at the time had been put in because he had a certain leadership style, which was to lead by attrition. His view was to pit operations against marketing, against sales, and whoever had the best idea would win, basically, and that would be the best idea. And it was probably the right type of leadership when he joined the organization, when it was struggling and needed to reinvent itself, and so they needed some fresh thinking. But when I was there, it had done that, and it had rebranded and relaunched, and it was now running. And that style of leadership didn't suit what was going on. In fact, it made everyone uncomfortable because he just pitted people against each other.
Yeah.
He didn't lead from the front. He just pushed, for example, marketing and operations together and said, well, you've got a different view, fight it out between yourselves, and was not involved in the process or the decision. So I think he sort of sat back too much. You were talking about stepping forward. I think he sat back too much, and it didn't really work, and it caused kind of issues and problems within the organization. So didn't have credibility. That's right. He didn't have credibility because he just pushed two people together, and he didn't take ownership of the issue as the leader. He just devoided himself of responsibility. So you two fight it out, and whatever you decide was what we're going to do. So he lost credibility.
So I guess our credibility changes, right, according to circumstance, context.
Yeah, I think it
So
does.
earlier in that organizational life, he was credible,
Yeah.
but he dined out on that credibility to a point where it ceased to exist.
Yes.
And I guess in different aspects of our lives, you have different levels of credibility.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah.
If I was starting out my journey now as a leader or as a manager, I'm just trying to change those two words, what would be your counsel, your advice to me if I wanted to build this credibility? Because right now, I feel I don't have any. There's people here more experienced than me. They've been here longer than me. So I'm feeling like I don't have the ability to tell people what to do. I don't have the ability to question what they do. I have the title, but nothing beyond the title. What would be your counsel to me, John?
Hmm. Here's a concept.
Okay.
I probably have a conversation with you in terms of a concept that said, think of it as parenting. When you become a parent, there's no book that tells you how to be the perfect parent. There's no real program or course or that can go on that says, oh, now you've got a couple of children. This is how to be the perfect parent. You learn, right? And you may feel you don't have the credibility to be a parent because you're suddenly thrown into it. I say suddenly, over a period of 2 or 3 years, your life's changed dramatically, and you've now got these two little things that you are responsible for. But no one's told you exactly how to do it. You have to learn and feel along the way. And being a parent requires you to make some difficult choices, have some difficult decisions, drive things, but also care passionately for them as individuals so that they grow and develop in the right way. And I'd probably say, be a parent. So you join an organization, you've got a team of people, they are your family. And if you lead from a hierarchical stance that says, because I'm the boss, you must do what I say, I think that's deeply flawed, and your credibility will be shot down within a matter of days or weeks, if not days. Whereas if you approach it from a point of view of saying, look, I'm here to lead you, I am here to serve you and do what I can to help you succeed. That is my role. And I may not have all the answers and I may not have all the knowledge, but let me draw on what you've got and let's work it together. Then I think you will have credibility, and you will earn that credibility fairly quickly.
That's a nice thought.
Hmm.
I mean, there are books on parenting, but I don't think they stand up to the real challenges of parenting.
Not really. You have to experience it. You have to experience it. And it's sometimes a scary place to be because you're thrown into situations you've never been in before and you've got to deal with them. Well, it's a bit like that, going into a leadership and management role, when you first go into one, when you cross that divide, cross the river between being a team member into
Yes.
managing people, and no one really prepares you for that. No one says you are moving into a different space here. Yes, you've got to do the job that you're expected to do, but on top of that, you've got to manage a whole bunch of people, and that requires a whole load of different stuff. No one really prepares you for that. So if your attitude is, I care about these people, I want to serve them, I want to do what I can so that they can achieve as much as they can achieve, I think that's a really good approach to management and leadership.
Because as a parent, we're getting kids ready for life in the big one. And I guess as managers, we're getting our direct reports ready to move on at some
Yeah.
stage. Because everyone moves on, right?
Yeah, and we should be doing everything we can to help them achieve that. And I think you'll reap the rewards if that's your approach. If you approach leadership management from a self-centered point of view that says I'm the leader and my team is working for me so I can go up the ladder, I think it's flawed.
So that's going to help people to build real credibility, not just the kind of buzzword stuff.
Yes, people will feel, I believe, that you are absolutely and genuinely there for them to help them achieve. And if that happens, I think they'll do anything for you.
It's a nice perspective, it really is.
But
Yeah.
counterintuitive again,
Yeah.
because I'm the boss, I'm the leader, I've got to make all the decisions, you do what I tell you to, lead from the front, all that kind of stuff. It's how we think about it. But actually thinking about how I can help every individual member of my team achieve more, succeed more, develop and grow in line with the business objectives as well. That's a different approach, right?
Yeah, it is. So when you went to your manager to ask for another person to join the team, and they turned you down because you didn't have the numbers to justify, do you feel you lost credibility with your team then? Because they knew you were going in to pitch for this extra resource, this extra person.
Well, initially that was my concern, but because of my realization, and I was straight up with them, and I said, I failed you. I wanted to go and member staff, and I haven't been able to do that. I think I retained my credibility in that I was working as hard as I could for them. I made some mistakes, we all do,
Yep.
but I was straightforward and transparent about it. So I think you'd have to ask them, but I think I retained my credibility as a leader of them.
Yes.
In that I'm here to do the best I can, accepting that sometimes I get it wrong. We're all human beings, right? We all get things wrong, but it's that openness and acceptance to embrace those mistakes openly. I think I retained my credibility, but you'd have to ask them.
Of course. But I guess, you put yourself out there, didn't you?
Yeah.
In terms of pitching for this extra person.
Yeah.
It's about your response, right? When it all goes wrong, it's about your response.
Yeah.
When it goes right, we're all fantastic.
Easy, isn't it? Yeah.
Easy.
Mm.
So I guess it's in that space when it's not all going right, our response to it.
And
determines our
the intuitive behavior is when something goes wrong, is to just pedal faster and try and kind of make it right and probably make it more wrong in the process and actually not involve others and try and hide it and all those kind of things because we're trying to protect ourselves. Sort of understandable, but
Yeah.
again, counterintuitively, that may increase the detraction from credibility, strangely. Whereas if it goes wrong and we say, look, okay, I've made a big mistake here, let's all get together and discuss what we can do about it, that has some really good credibility, I think.
So a key skill then coming out of that is about asking questions.
Asking questions, relying on others, not just, I'm the boss.
Yeah.
Actually getting input, not just questions, but input and suggestions and solutions from others.
Yes.
Perhaps in areas where you're lacking knowledge. You can't know everything.
Yeah.
And patience.
Yeah. Okay. I like the patience.
I would say, yeah.
So here I am, newly promoted. I'm a manager. I don't feel I have credibility yet. I deeply want it because I think it's going to be the thing that makes the difference. But if I can be patient with myself, not jump in with both feet, if I can be patient with those around me, but if I can ask good questions when I'm starting to understand more, so that helps with credibility. But also maybe if I'm asking questions which make other people understand more, then I'm starting to guide a direction of thinking.
Yes. And that plays into the concept of what can you do for them?
Yeah, okay. And as we're talking here, I'm just thinking about the word credibility. I've never played with the word. I don't even know if it has a root or where it comes from. But credit, ability, the ability to build credit.
Whoa. Interesting. Whoa. Michael,
Ah,
have a rest. That's
I'm going to have a rest in a darkened room after this. Our ability
okay.
to build credit with others.
Yeah. Yeah, that is essentially it is about that rather than others building credit with you. And I think that's the bit that's counterintuitive. I'm the boss. You need to impress me. I'm in charge. All that thinking. Switch it around. How can I build credit with you? What can I do to make you better at your job? What can I do to make the business better? And that's around all this, asking questions, difficult questions, getting a bit of insight, drawing on others' experience in order to get a collective view of things. That's really nice. Building.
What is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been a delight catching up with you today and getting your insight on these couple of subjects. Thank you for your time.
I've enjoyed it. Thank you, Mike.
Let's get together real soon, have that cup of coffee and, continue the conversation. You inspire me every time I work with you. Genuinely, I hope you know that. I think you know that. But summarize what have been the key moments in our conversation, Jono, today, just to help me here from your.
Well, I'll work backwards. Let's start with credibility. Key moments. Key thinking. Work on behalf of others. Work for others to build your own credibility. Don't get others to build your credibility for you. I think that's kind of absolutely massively important. And in terms of communication, this idea of integrity, honesty, maybe being counterintuitive, and we feel perhaps on the back foot to justify decisions and behaviors with a bunch of chuff. Don't do it. Just have the courage to say what you need to say and have really strong, powerful, open, transparent communication, and model that within your teams, and it'll be a better team. So those are my sum ups, I think, probably the two.
Thank you, Jono, and thank you to everyone who's been listening. I hope this podcast has been a good spend of your time as ever. There'll be more coming in the preceding months. But thank you. Feel free to subscribe and also share with your friends and colleagues. Jono, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
See you soon. All the
See you
best.
soon.